and I want to turn things over now to our fearless state librarian, Mary Sucie, who will give us some updates on the state library and maybe some things that we can expect now that the legislative session is over. There will be time after the presentation for questions, but as Mary said, they should probably be easy. So if you can hold them until then, that would be great. So thank you and welcome, Mary.
Thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited. This is our first unconference I've participated here in North Dakota. I've done other unconferences, but this is, and I've done an online one before, but this is a great concept and I hope to see more of these. So I'll start with the maybe more negative and move into the lots more positive and end on a high note, I hope. As you know, this was a tough session for a lot of reasons. Budget was primary, and that was on the top of everyone's mind throughout the whole session. So the long and short of it is we have about a 14% budget cut for the 17-19 biennium over the 15-17. So it's not great. It could have been a lot worse. We're grateful that it's only that much. The cuts, the biggest cuts were to our state aid for public libraries grant, and then we also had cuts in personnel. We had cuts in our equipment line, and we had cuts to our databases line on the state side. We also did lose one position here at the state library. We had 2 positions that were vacant. So at this time, the position that we lost was the digitization position. We do have we have 2 staff members that are interested in picking up different parts of that. So we do plan to continue with digitization, but some of the things we've done, like the Our Town Road shows, formerly called Scan Days, probably are not going to happen. But we should be able to continue digitizing images internally, the images that we got from our former road shows, and perhaps someday in the future we'll be able to add those back in. So that, you know, overall, losing a position was hard. And of course, budget cuts are never easy, but it was a tough session. A lot of things got cut. So, you know, we'll take our lumps with everybody else with a smile. And Cindy Claremont-Schmidt, Assistant State Librarian, likes to say, well, we still have, you know, 86% of our budget, so we can still do things. It's just a little less that maybe we can do. At this time, we have no intentions to make any further cuts to databases. We think we'll be able to absorb those with the cuts that we had done prior. And of course, if that changes, we'll get the word out to the library community. And I think that's something that Marit wanted to visit on at the end of my short presentation here. We had a couple of bills, quite a few bills we were following this session. Of course, I gave presentations on our budget bill on both the House and Senate side. We did receive 36 letters of support on the House side, which is where we started, and we received 30, I think it was, on the Senate side. The good thing is we received letters from academic, public, and school libraries, but we have 84 public libraries, a couple hundred school libraries, and then is it 18 academic libraries? So on the one hand, it's great. It's the most letters of support that we've ever received. But on the other hand, you know, out of over 300 libraries, say, we received 32 or 36. So I'd love to see that number go up next session. So I actually have presented a challenge to the NDLA Executive Board for that number to double next session. So NDLA, Ledge Committee, and the board will be reaching out to the library community to try and increase those letters of support. One of the bills that we gave testimony on was the OER, Open Educational Resources Bill. It was a bill that was a study that was proposed to the effect of OERs on K-12 education. When I gave, well, Cindy gave my testimony on my behalf. I wasn't able to. But when we gave our testimony, and then Christine Kiaba from the Bismarck Public Library testified on behalf of NDLA. We asked that they consider adding academic libraries into that as well, but they did not opt to amend that bill. So it was a bill for a study of OERs on K-12, and we'll see if that study gets selected or not. We are excited about this next thing. We are working with the Grand Forks Air Force Base, and there's a grant that they can receive to add for STEM kits. And so the Air Force Base will get the STEM kits, but the state library will circulate them. And we put together a list of 30 different STEM kits. We don't know yet how many of those we'll be receiving, but we do know that in October we will be adding a lot more STEM kits to our collection that any type of library can check out. Right now we do have Little Bits kits, and those can circulate. Those circulate a lot to schools, but again, any library can check those out. So, and you can check those out using KitKeeper through our website. If anybody has questions about that, let me know. We also have added Zoom. And we're interested, although now that I've seen how this Blackboard Collaborate works, that's pretty cool. You don't have a whiteboard in Zoom. But Zoom's a great resource, and I think we would like to use it a number of different ways. We're now doing webinars, and our webinars are different from the webinars that we were doing before, so they're not just on the databases. We have a webinar coming up this week, I think, on coding clubs in libraries. And so there's information about that on our website if you're interested, or you can contact Angie Hauser. She's our new CE coordinator, and she can give you more information about that. But in addition to using Zoom for that kind of thing, we'd like to start using Zoom as a way to bring librarians together for networking opportunities that they don't have to leave their desk to participate in. And so I spoke with Marette when she invited me to present at this, and that's during the Q&A or after I'm done talking. It's one of the things that we'd like to explore is there interest in doing that kind of thing? And if so, what is the interest in doing it by library type? So in other words, giving academic or public libraries or school libraries a chance to come together. Is there interest in doing it by region? So we would say, okay, you know, east of Jamestown, all libraries can come together. Or is there interest in doing both of those? So we'll chat about that in a couple minutes and get some feedback on that. And then the other thing that I wanted to let you guys know, that in our 17-19 biennial budget, we do still have money for library vision grants, and that was not touched at all. So it's about $237,500 for library vision grants. And the coordinating council meets later this week. We'll be meeting in Williston, and they'll be talking about what opportunities to add this next grant round. So we know there'll be a resource sharing OCLC grant. That's the original intent of Library Vision, so we will continue that. And we may do another collection development one. We may do an innovative capacity building one. You know, we may do tablets again or computers. So we'll be talking about that at the end of next week, and then we'll make our announcement in July with the grant apps being due probably in September. So I don't have specifics yet on Library Vision grants, but I did want to assure you guys that there is no change in the amount for the Library Vision grants. And so that's pretty good. That shows that there is support in the legislature for libraries, even though we did sustain a budget cut. And then the final thing I wanted to mention, you guys have probably seen the emails coming across about the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS. That is the federal agency that supports libraries and museums. And they do it in a couple different ways. The one that's most significant and impactful for our state is their Grants to States program. That's the program that the state library gets their federal dollars from. And we do a lot of different things with those. We support our databases with those grant dollars. We support our Minitex contract which supports interlibrary loan and resource sharing. And I know our academics in particular take advantage of that resource sharing tool. It also supports our interlibrary loan service, our library development, our CE that we offer. It supports Talking Books, which is services to our blind and physically handicapped citizens. It supports the MLS grants that we offer. So there's a lot of different services that are impacted by our federal dollars. So if you want to do something, if you want to be proactive, you could send an email or phone call Senator Heitkamp, Senator Hoeven's offices, ask them to sign on to the Dear Appropriators letter. Senator Hoeven won't sign on to that letter because he's on the committee, but he may include it in an ask on another bill. So it's still worth it to encourage him to support LSTA. You can also call Representative Kramer and ask him to support LSTA on the House side, or IMLS. So that's the big things that I wanted to touch on. I'm happy to answer if anybody has any questions about those things that I mentioned or any other questions. I'd be happy to entertain them now.
I guess I have a question for you regarding that IMLS money. You get the feeling that, like, I know it was, I think, completely slashed in the president's budget, but do you get the feeling from Congress that they're more supportive of it, or how worried are you?
I'm still a little worried just because things are strange in Washington right now, and it seems day to day something else pops up that we thought would never happen, or whatever. I don't want to get into a sidebar in politics. Just to say that things are very unsteady right now. But from the North Dakota standpoint, when I was in DC and I met with each of our aides for each of our legislators, they are all very supportive of LSTA and IMLS. What we're hearing out of the ALA Washington office is that IMLS may sustain a cut next budget year, but they are not likely to be completely eliminated.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the state librarians, when we met the day after everyone met with their legislators, I would say it was mixed, Marette, in terms of what the state librarians reported from their senators. A lot of the state librarians reported that they were hearing similar, that there's support for libraries, that they recognize the difference that libraries are making in communities all across the country. And by community, I'm using that generically, whether it's an academic community, a public community, a city, a community of a special library. One of the state librarians pointed out that after Hurricane Katrina, libraries were actually identified as an essential service in the federal definition. And so that's, I think, something that we have in our, our back pocket that we can pull out and remind our legislators if we need to. I think that's very helpful. But there were a couple state librarians who said that we have a battle in front of us. Their legislators told them that the library community needs to be very proactive, and we need to communicate with our legislators about the value that libraries are offering, and we need to be very specific when we contact them. So you can't just contact them and say support libraries, but say the UND library serves our students in these ways, and here's how we're impacting the community, and here's the difference that we're making, so that we're showing the value of the dollars that they're giving. Does that answer your question? So I'm worried, I'm not panicked.
Okay, yeah, that definitely.
If I can sum it up, I'm worried but not panicked.
Okay.
And I will say, it seems like, librarians aren't good at tuning our own horns. It's not something we're strong at. But I think that we're getting better at it, and I think that the proposal in the president's budget of the complete elimination of the only federal agency that directly supports us has gotten some libraries motivated. This year's National Library Ledge Day, or NLLD, had the most participants it's ever had. There was 600 that signed up to attend in person. The room only holds like 500, and then the overflow room was 130, and those were both jammed. They actually had to shut registration down. And then another 1,000 people signed up to attend virtual Library Ledge Day. So I think that is all very positive. I was, once again, the lone person from North Dakota. And so next year I would love to see someone accompany me to Ledge Day, because I think there's power when you have other librarians than the state librarian. They're talking about, you know, what we do and how impactful our libraries are. One of the fun things I got to share, though, was an infographic that Kristen Byram has created for, she created it for our local Ledge Day. And last year, more people visited, more North Dakotans visited their public libraries than attended all Vikings home games, NDSU football games, the State Fair, and Host Fest. So that's pretty cool. Okay, I see there was another question. Legislators value quantitative explanations, qualitative explanations, or combination. I would say, Jalissa, I hope I'm saying your name right. I think legislators value both the quantitative and the qualitative. So they like the stories, but they want the stories backed up with data. Does that answer your question?
This is Kristen. I'm going to kind of piggyback on that. Is that I'm hoping that through our various listservs that we can actually share stories. Or you had talked about having academics participate in Snapshot Day, for instance, and I'm never very
Kristen, you're kind of breaking up
with an idea, but if okay. Oh, I don't know why. Is that better?
There's a little bit of feedback, and you're kind of coming in and out.
All right. Is that better?
We're hearing what you're saying. You're still a little fuzzy.
So maybe while Kristen's working on her audio, or maybe if it works for her, if you could type it into chat. Laura brought up that Zoom thing that you talked about earlier.
So if I'm reading your chat correctly, Laura, you're saying you like the option of both by type of library as well as regionally, because there's benefit of talking with, if you're an academic librarian, there's benefit talking to the public or school libraries within your region, but then there's also benefit from talking with just, say, other academic librarians. Am I understanding your comment correctly?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. We've done some informal networking type socials with the Fargo-Moorhead area libraries, and those have been helpful to know what they're doing, how we can benefit from what they're doing and collaborate. And then also I feel like when we learn about what other academic libraries are doing, that's usually more directly relatable to things that we can do.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, and I will relate both of those to our CE coordinator, Angie, and let her know that there's interest in both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for me, or I don't know if Kristen got her sound fixed. Oh, Kristen says she'd like to share best practices for how academic libraries and university students in particular benefit from state funding. So do you mean the federal funding that comes through the state library, Kristen, or do you mean state dollars? So by state funding, do you
I
mean
think
the state
any.
library?
I think any, but I guess how it down, for me, it's easy to find stories for public libraries, retraining, back to work transit. But it's harder to find the kind of impactful stories for what we do. Have you ever heard of those, or are there real spotlight things that academic librarians have done?
You broke up a little bit again, but I think I got the gist of your question, Kristen. And we could certainly work with academic libraries on coming up with some of those stories. In terms of impactful stories, I know that, again, some of the academic libraries are doing some makerspace kind of stuff. That's kind of a buzz term right now, even for legislators. There's the White House Maker Fair that happens every year. But even just stories about how you're helping students with research, and I think academics are doing quite a bit of training for the workplace, and I think there's some stories there that we could harness as well. I'm not sure if I totally answered your question or not. I see there's a question from Phyllis. Will cuts to IMLS funding impact the licensing of the databases? You know, at this point, Phyllis, it's hard to say exactly what the impact of those cuts will be, because we don't know what the cuts will be in terms of how much. But in the worst case scenario, if IMLS were completely zeroed out and we had to rely on only our state dollars, then yes, I think it's safe to say that licensing of the databases would be impacted. To what degree, it's hard to say.
Are there any further questions for Mary? I guess I could ask another one while people are thinking. When you talk about the online networking with Zoom, I know we kind of are trying this as an opportunity to network, but have you heard from other states or other librarians who have done similar things successfully, and what did that kind of look like?
Well, I have experience doing it from when I was in Illinois, but it wasn't via Zoom. I'm not aware of, I know that, I'm not aware of other states doing it. ARSL, which is the Association of Rural and Small Libraries, they're doing some online networking groups, or was it MPLA? I think it was ARSL. So they're bringing together solo librarians. In other words, public libraries who you know, are the only person in their library. And they're doing one, but that was limited to 20 people. And it hasn't happened yet, so I'm not sure how successful it was. We are doing it, we are using Zoom to connect our coordinating council members when they are not able to be in the room. NDLA has used Zoom for their board meetings now. We use Zoom for MPLA and ARSL board meetings. So I've seen it used more for board meetings than for like regional type meetings like we're proposing. But I guess in my mind, the way it would work is we would put out the information, here's when the meeting is, people would sign up, and then before the meeting we would send the Zoom link out. We would have a little question, or we would have probably some questions kind of to get the conversation rolling. We would serve as facilitators, but we really see it as something the librarians would take ownership of and direct, kind of an unconference essentially, similar to this.
Okay, that sounds really great.
Let's see. Monica says, I'm a little curious why academics were excluded from the study. I'm not sure if any explanation was given. Monica, there was no explanation given, but I think it's because they did a lot of work in the last legislative session with academics and OERs, and so now they want to study it from a K-12 perspective in terms of what the cost to the school districts might be, and I think that's why they kept it focused on K-12, because textbooks at the K-12 level are different than textbooks at the academic level. So I think that's why the academics weren't included. Any other questions?
Hi, Mary. This is Kristen. My wonderful teammates suggest that I use the phone to log in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. So I did miss a little bit when you were troubleshooting, but do we have an actual liaison between academics and your staff, or could somebody be appointed in that role?
We do not have a liaison between academic libraries. We don't have someone who is the assigned point person. What are you envisioning when you say a liaison?
I'm thinking, well, and that's the thing, it's not really very cooked through, but last time when there were some cuts to databases, it didn't quite trickle down to us, and honestly, if usage of those databases hadn't been great, maybe we could have mobilized on our end to increase usage or give input on why that was the case. Or the kits that you mentioned, I could definitely see applicability to some of our education students here, that they might be interested in knowing about that. And until you mentioned it today, I didn't. So there's so many things that you do and offer that I don't know about. So kind of, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Sure. Okay, so I have a couple of thoughts. The first thought I'm going to say is if you're not subscribed for the Flickertail, get subscribed.
Okay, I am not.
Because a lot of, in the Flickertail, we announced the databases in the Flickertail. We announced, we promote if we get a new book club kit or another kit in Flickertail. We promote a different database each month, so to try and increase usage of those, and other different announcements. So the Flickertail has a lot of good information in it. I think we can have a discussion internally and have someone as the point person. What we would need to know here, oh, thanks for sharing that, Jessica. Jessica shared a link to the new, most recent Flickertail. I think what we would need on our end would be what's the best way to connect with the academic librarians. Is it through, the NDLA listserv, or is there another listserv that one of us should be on? When we announced the cuts to the databases, there was not time to get feedback, for one thing. Let me explain how that process worked. We had 2 weeks to come up with a 6% cut or 4% cut. And then when the next cut came around, we had 2 weeks to come up with an additional 2% cut. And so that's, when you have 2 weeks start to finish, that's not enough time to go out and say, we need feedback from you guys. So that decision was based on usage and cost. We looked at both. We did a ROI analysis, and now what we're doing is when we want to add or eliminate a database, we are using our coordinating council as our external database committee. And so if you have thoughts about the databases, you can certainly send them directly to myself or one of our staff, but you can also contact the representative for your type of library on the coordinating council and ask them to bring something forth. And the coordinating council meets quarterly. And you can find a list of who represents what type of libraries on our website. The representative for public academic libraries is Stephen Bannister from Minot State. The representative for private academic libraries is Phyllis Kuno from Trinity Bible College. She is the representative until the end of June, and then we will have a new representative, but that person hasn't been appointed yet by the governor. So we'll announce those appointments once they're made by the governor. And those will be announced in Flickertail as well. The other thing I should have mentioned, and I forgot, just to kind of keep on your radar, is the state library is one of 4 pilot agencies that's working with ITD, the state's IT department, on a website redesign, and hopefully sometime this fall we'll be rolling out a new website. And so again, keep your eyes open for that also, because things are going to move where they're, so your bookmarks won't be valid and stuff like that. So just something to be aware of.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful information.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Kristen?
It
we
does.
Can start. And so who is it best for me to connect with to find out communication channels and that sort of thing? Would that be you or Murat or?
I think I'm going to be updating the listserv, so I think for sure go ahead and contact me, because I think some of those people that you mentioned, we should make sure at the very least they're on our listserv.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I saw there was another comment about Zoom being a good way to connect. A once every other month meeting. We were thinking initially maybe quarterly, but we are certainly open to every other month if that turns out to be what the library community wants. So we can explore both of those.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'd like to thank Mary one more time for taking the time to speak with us and answer questions. Now we want to move on to some larger group discussions. So with that in mind, we chose the new ACRL framework for information literacy as a starting point for some of these discussions. And as health sciences librarians and academic librarians, we all want our students to have information literacy skills necessary to succeed. And so I'm going to put some questions out to you guys, and please don't be shy about using your microphone to talk to us, but if you're not comfortable doing that, please write things in the chat as well, and myself or some of the other moderators will read aloud your comments or your thoughts to share them with anyone. So my first question I kind of want to put to the group is, do you find the new ACRL framework an effective tool for helping our students learn information literacy skills? Does it do a good job informing how you teach the students, no matter what discipline you're in? Or has it functioned better for you as a resource that helps you communicate with faculty? Basically, what have you found regarding the ACRL framework? Is it effective or not in the ways that you use it?
Well, I can start. I found it helpful for thinking about, I guess one issue I came across is how do I differentiate when I'm teaching the students at different levels? And so I felt like this helped me think about, okay, well, what should they need to know at a lower level versus higher level? And we talked about that in our library, which we're going to look at that again some more this summer too, and think about learning outcomes that we want them to know by the time they graduate. And I think it's also helpful for having conversations with the faculty about what else they can get out of us coming into their classroom and teaching them, besides just them learning how to use a specific resource for that particular project. And so I think it gives us more credibility as educators, and then also helps us think about the value that we're bringing to the curriculum.
Definitely. Thanks, Laura.
This is Dawn at UND. Can we take a step back? How many people are using the ACRL framework? Can you put in chat or raise your hand or something to indicate if you are using the ACRL framework for your information literacy sessions? Oh. So that's not very many.
Dawn, do you use them fairly regularly, or is it something that
I
you
do not.
Okay.
Nope, I do not. I'm not very plugged into ACRL. You know, us medical librarians do things our own way.
Yeah.
But I do know that there are some, there's a group of medical librarians right now that are looking at taking the ACRL framework and seeing where it matches up with the physician competencies that are somewhat new that the med curriculums have to use. And so then there are portions of that that are related to information literacy. So they're looking at whether they can apply the ACRL framework to those, to the PCRS. So I think that's primarily why I haven't paid more attention, was that it's not being talked about in the groups of people that I've been primarily talking to.
Sure. Well, I guess I could, since we're backing up a little bit, I apologize for just jumping right in. For those of you who haven't used the ACRL framework, I'll just give a brief overview. I think back in 2000, the ACRL created the standards for information literacy, which kind of put pretty kind of strict guidelines, like students should know this, this, and this. And that was sort of redone in a way last year and turned into the framework for information literacy. And it's not quite as, it's not strict guidelines. It's put in this framework that you can see here on this slide, where there's 6 frames, and it kind of guides the way, or I think the intention is for it to guide the way librarians teach students and give them a lot of flexibility in how they do that and what they're teaching. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that definition, but that's the ACRL framework in a nutshell. So, so again, for those who are using it, has it been effective or not?
I can share.
This is Kelly Cornton at Mayville State University, and we have a 1 credit required general education course in information literacy that I teach to all the students. And I found it very helpful because it's a way to get the students to understand this. You know, you can't evaluate a website with that black and white idea you had back in high school where you got to look for an author, the date, like we're, you know, everything is shades of gray. There's no absolutes anymore. And I've had success kind of focusing it that way.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. I think I saw somebody, oh, Phyllis typed in chat that you've looked at it but not found it particularly clear. Has anyone else also felt that way about it? Or Phyllis, you want to talk a little bit more about, you know, maybe why you preferred the standards to this?
This is Devin at UND, and I think I have a unique perspective. When I was in library school, I was working at a community college, and they utilized the framework heavily in all of their lesson plans. They had formalized a lesson planning document which referred directly back to the framework for all the different aspects of every single lesson. So when I first learned the framework, I also learned real life applications for all of the different frames. And then as I moved on in my library career, I sort of began internalizing these concepts and sort of turning them into more abstract, almost like targets that I was shooting towards. So now as a medical librarian, I see them almost as colors for where I'm guiding the discussion. So
Sure. I think that's a good way to look at it, because I remember learning the standards, and that's very prescriptive, whereas the ACRL framework is sort of a bit more flexible. Let me see here in chat. Sarah says she has not had hands-on experience with teaching, but felt that the standards were very strict and easier to measure, whereas the framework is just a guide. So it's a little bit harder to ensure that goals are being met. She also agrees that it might be a little bit unclear. Let's see. Denise at UND says it helps focus the lesson plan. Kristen has set out very clear guidelines for us here at CFL. I can't remember what CFL stands for. Like I said earlier, combine it with engineering science standards. Still a work in progress. Oh, Chester Fritz Library, thank you. Still a work in progress, but it's making teaching more fun. I hope the students are having fun and learning too. Yeah, definitely. Yep, and Sarah says she likes the flexibility. Yeah, I definitely think the framework is good in that regard compared to the standards. There's a lot of different things we can do with it. So I'm going to move on to another question related to this. A number of us may have positions, in our positions as librarian, there's a lot of ways we can engage with students. So in your experience, do you use mostly one-shot sessions, workshops in the library, or multiple session courses like throughout a semester? And does the framework work in those different contexts for you?
This is Erica at UND, and I think that the framework, because it is such a big picture view, I feel like it's more, if you think about it in its entirety, it's more applicable to like scaffolded sessions, or you know, more of an actual information literacy curriculum, where if you just have a one-shot session, it's hard to think about all of these. You definitely can't squeeze everything, well, obviously, into one session. So it's hard to think about which of the frameworks or which of the frames should be, you know, which should be emphasized in each session, I think.
Definitely.
I totally agree, Erica. And I'm sorry, I sort of dropped out and I'm not sure where you guys lost me.
I don't know what happened. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. I'm used to trying to implement like 2 or 3 of them, and usually it's based off of need of the students, right? So if they're brand new to research, you probably don't want to jump to authority as constructed and contextual and try to teach them about rhetoric. And it might be better to just set up scholarship as a conversation, and this is nice and you shouldn't be afraid of it. So based off of student need, I think then you can sort of progress if you have multiple lessons, but if you don't, then maybe just leave it open-ended
so that they can see the rest of the steps in the process and sort of naturally progress along their way, if that makes sense.
I definitely
Yeah,
think it does. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Erica, I mean, that's for sure. I love that it forces us to slow down and not throw so much at the student in a 50-minute session.
I also think that it's important to keep, well, Devin, I think it was you who said earlier that it's just sort of part of the way you think about library instruction now, all of these different pieces. But I also think it's important, and this relates to what you just said, Kristen, students are really probably never going to be able to master all of this. And so I feel like no matter what level we're teaching at, so a number of us are working with undergraduate students, myself at the med school working with, graduate/medical students. Even at that upper level of education, there's still room to learn in all of these areas.
I completely agree.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess one thing I was thinking of in relation to that is since it's like hard to know, like, okay, who's going to want instruction and what instruction are they going to get, I've been trying to target the required courses for the business degree programs and make sure that they get like certain things at a certain level that way. And I just basically have some very entry-level classes and some very advanced level classes right now. So now I'm trying to target more of those middle type classes. And that my hope is that then it can be a little bit more structured what they learn at different levels.
To jump off what Laura said, she added in the chat to, we at NDSU kind of mapped some outcomes, I guess you could say, to these frames, kind of where we think different students should be at, whether they're lower division, upper division, undergraduates, or graduates. So definitely feel to take a look at that. Laura included the link in the comments. So Sarah says, ideally the framework would also be instrumental to a class syllabus, and this would be a way for librarians to collaborate with faculty. Definitely. I know I've tried to communicate with faculty on this. I haven't been terribly successful, but has anyone else kind of had the experience of bringing this up with faculty?
Merritt, this is Kristen at UND, and I have not too much yet, although we plan to start with the scholarship as conversation frame as a way to have them share student work in the library, poster sessions, maybe some student-led talks. So that's kind of a further development. But this framework is based on that threshold concept where you're distilling your discipline into kind of what's most important. And the faculty really love that over here. They've been through some workshops for their disciplines. So I think it'll be a pretty easy sell once we start talking about them.
All right, and Phyllis just added in chat that they are rebooting their whole information literacy program because now we have a reference and instruction librarian. Congratulations. So I feel that we have a lot to learn and to apply at this point. I had no time when I was doing the instruction. It was everything from large orientations to one-shots to term paper boot camps. Yeah, definitely. I think that's something I feel like I still struggle with, trying to adapt it to different kinds of courses. And Sarah says it's hard to get the buy-in at times from faculty, but I keep going back to how flexible the framework is. Yep. And Jaleesa says I've brought up the curriculum mapping NDSU did with the framework with one of my anthropology faculty members. And it helped the faculty member think more broadly about the topics I could cover in a session and how those would fit in with their goals for the students. And that's really awesome, actually. I think most of us would agree that a lot of faculty maybe see us as just showing how to use the databases, and the framework shows that we can do more than just basic bibliographic instruction. We can get students thinking critically about information. Since Jaleesa brought up her anthropology faculty members, I kind of want to jump off that. And I know we've got health sciences librarians here today, and then just our general academic and special libraries section members. So many of us might have different experiences with different subject areas. Oh, and public, yeah, thank you. So I want to ask, have people found this fairly easy to adapt to their different subject areas? Don mentioned that maybe it's a little bit harder to adapt with maybe the health sciences kind of evidence-based practice information literacy, but what are other people's experiences?
Well, let me clarify. I wasn't necessarily saying it was harder.
Sure.
I just personally haven't looked at it.
I really think it could easily fit into evidence-based medicine, especially the parts that are about evaluating resources. I can see that fitting directly into like the tiers of resources that we use for EBP and for PICO. Not that I want to give students another acronym or process, but I think it's an action that they're probably going to be used to doing. So if we add a sort of a structure for why or a structure for how, I think it would make sense to them.
Definitely. And
This is Kelly.
Following along in the chat, but Erica just posted a link to the sandbox for assessments of instruction that ACRL put together. So take a look at that if you have a chance.
This is Kelly. So at one of my other roles, I'm on a task force for the Association of American Health Sciences Libraries, or ASL, and they are actually trying to map the framework to the LCME competencies to the ACAGME competencies. So from undergrad through all the way through residency, specifically related to the EPAs, which is the entrustable professional activities, which they are contemplating putting into action in med school. Those are things that every student must be able to do on their first day of residency. And it includes some information literacy type pieces. But I have to say, in working on the map and trying to map all these things together, it is not as smooth as one might think. Because if you take something that's written like the framework and you try to map it to what LCME and ACGME do, which are very competency based, and the framework is very non-competency based anymore, it actually has gotten very difficult to map this now. We did a map, it's done. We'll be presenting it at MLA in 2 weeks, but it really isn't as easy as you think anymore, because medical education is really going to, they must do X and Y on July 1st, and this is research is iterative and it depends and it's complex. Yeah, they don't like that kind of verbiage anymore. So it's been very interesting to try to push these things and map these things all together, because they're actually really pushing towards competencies and evidence-based medicine, and the framework is very loosey-goosey now. And so you really have to figure out a way to map it all, and it's been tough. It's been very tough.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
And And Dawn asked in the chat, does anyone know anything about the nursing competencies? Erica says, I haven't looked at them for a while, and they were formally aligned with the ACRL guidelines, and that's about what I found too. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on nursing or their own subject areas that they would like to share. I guess I can ask my last question since we're getting down to the last few minutes for this discussion. But for those of you who have used this, are there any frames within the framework that you have found particularly helpful when planning your instruction, or that have kind of given you a new frame of reference from which to teach? So I guess basically, has it inspired any new thinking or new instruction for you?
This is Erica again. I would just say that I like that the way authority is constructed and contextual is articulated. I think personally I've had a hard time trying to explain that to students, and so I find that the way that it's explained in the framework is very helpful.
Thanks, Erica. I guess one thing that I've done new, and I will do a shout out to Jaleesa who helped me kind of think about this, but I use the information as value frame to add a little bit of I guess fun to some of my classes, and I've started asking students to do sort of a Jeopardy type thing by guessing how much we pay for some of the databases that we use, and it really kind of opens their eyes to where their student fees are going, where their tax dollars are going, and hopefully again gets them thinking a little bit critically about information in that way. Kelly Kornfen, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, says, I've been telling students how they are learning how to be part of the scholarly communication in their field, not just users of information. Definitely. Devin says, I find the strategic exploration frame to be especially helpful when introducing students to the idea that there is no end to research. It's iterative, but you need a plan. Definitely. I think in a minute here, we're going to take a quick break. Are there any kind of last thoughts on the ACRL framework?
I think this is Kristen again. Just one thing that I thought was really interesting was last year when I attended immersion, and Craig, who was on the task force for this framework, was one of the faculty, and so to kind of be in the room with the people who created this was really neat. And actually everything that was in the standards is in the framework. It's just in there differently. But because of the knowledge practices and the dispositions that come underneath each of these frames, if you really do want to get at the competencies, and so yeah, I found Kelly's point really interesting, that it's difficult, but it probably wasn't impossible. I mean, right? It's still in there to some degree.
Definitely.
Kristen, we actually ended up, because the framework is written the way it is, I think we ended up trying to think if she mapped it to these 6 or if she actually tried to map it to some of the knowledge practice pieces, but
Sure.
it was quite the event.
Okay, well, I think we'll take a quick break here. I just want to thank everyone for this conversation. I know it's a little bit difficult to get used to this online environment and moving between chat and audio, so really thank you for your patience and participating. And I encourage folks to share emails or contact each other if there's more you want to know. So at this point, we have a break until 2:30. So get some snacks or run to the restroom. And at 2:30, we will be starting with presentations, which we'll all take here in this main room. So you don't have to change anything with Blackboard at the moment. So like I said, be back here by 2:30 and we'll continue on.
Okay, it is 2:31 actually by my time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have our first presenter, Kelly Thormanson. So Kelly, why don't you go ahead and share your slides and unmute your microphone, and we'll be anxious to hear what you have to tell us.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you. You have your camera. Good. Great.
Did I get it all figured out? Do you guys see my slides?
Yep, looks great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So first off, hello. I'm Kelly Thormanson. I'm the interim director of the School of Medicine and Health Sciences Library Resources at UND. I think I know most of the people on this call, and I know a lot of my own staff is on this call. So if I say something wrong or if you want to add to my discussion here, feel free, guys. So I like this informal kind of unconference thing. This is kind of cool. So what I want to talk about is life in a bookless library. And I'm hoping to discuss, okay, I lost the slide, so.
That was my bad, I'm sorry. And also this hammer is really distracting me, so sorry. I'll put your file back up, Kelly. Sorry.
Okay, oh, I was gonna say I can do it. I got it.
Okay.
I'm back.
I'm sorry.
I was like, and I lost it. I mean, I have it well rehearsed, but not that well rehearsed. I kind of need the video to or the slides to get me to know what I'm going to say. And so life in a bookless library, and then I do want to do a discussion at the end. So I'm hoping the last 5 minutes people will want to talk about this interesting topic. So once upon a time, the UND Med Library looked just like everybody else's library. And these pictures are actually from, I think, when the library opened in 1991 in the old School of Medicine and Health Sciences building, now known as Columbia Hall here at UND. And so your stacks of books, your soft seating, your study carrels, the whole shebang, a very typical library situation. And in 2013, I arrived here as the assistant director, and at the exact same time, North Dakota legislature gave UND money to build a brand new School of Medicine and Health Sciences building. Obviously, there was lots of focus groups and consultants and architects and all those people constantly meeting and talking and discussing. And original drawings for this new School of Medicine had your traditional library. It had stacks of books, it had study carrels, very similar to the way it used to look. But then higher administration within the School of Medicine said, well, let's go visit other libraries and other schools of medicine to see what they look like. And in doing so, they discovered that a lot of new schools of medicine that were being built didn't have libraries, or they had bookless libraries. So the decision was made to be the next generation of library. So the library here at the new School of Medicine has no stacks. There are no physical books, with some exceptions here. So we're a paperless library now. We have no extra money to replace items that were discarded. So keep that in mind. They got rid of all of our stuff, but then they didn't give us money to replace it in digital format. We do have some reserve shelves behind our information desk that hold reserve items that belong to faculty and to ourselves, and some reference items that didn't come in electronic format, and we knew we couldn't get rid of them because they were highly used. So we held on to those. And then we did have in the old building a history of medicine room, and we did bring some of that collection with us here, and they are in some locked bookcases that are located in the library space. I actually am going to show you some pictures with that. So let me move along here. Come on. So here's kind of a general picture of our library now. This is, we're located on the second floor of the new building. And as you can see, right in the middle, there is an information desk right here in the center of the picture. And then off to the left, you'll see it's sort of a long, skinny space, and that is where you'll find some of the study space in the building. It's technically library space. We kind of manage it and look after it. However, in the grand scheme of things, there's study space all over the building, and this is just a minor area, a minor piece of that study space that the students have available to them. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of close-up. Here's on the right picture some of the study new furniture. There's some sofas, some chairs with the desk piece attached, high-level cafe tables and chairs, etc. And then on the left picture, you can see where we have the locked case cabinets. That's where the history of medicine, what we kept of the history of medicine is in that space there. And then there's a close-up on the left of our information desk. You will find that that part actually has they're actually really comfy chairs, Mary, because they also swivel, and the kids love them. And so this desk area, we share the information desk with the IT department in our building. So people can come here and ask questions of IT or the library services. There's gates that drop down at night. So that's our only outward-facing library now is this info desk. What you see on the right is actually behind the walls there of our info desk. This is the space that the behind-the-scenes librarians, cataloging, acquisitions, etc. They're in this space, and then we share our space, our suite, as they're called here, with the IT department. So off to the right side of that picture, you'll find all the cubicles for workstations for the IT staff. The library director's office, which is where I'm sitting right now, is way in the back of that picture. We also have a workroom and some other space, but I didn't want to overload the PowerPoint with too many pictures. So this is kind of what we're sitting in now. This is how we look now. And then the next generation also included embedded librarians. So if you know anything about UND, you know that we already have some embedded librarians, those that are on clinical campuses in Bismarck, Minot, and Fargo. Now here at the School of Medicine, all of our reference and education librarians are actually embedded in the suites that the faculty sit in. So you'll notice I pointed out we just have a few workstations, and we have the back of the house people here. The librarians themselves now in this new building are actually not in the library. They are up on the 3rd and 4th floor in workstations that are situated in faculty suites. I managed to not catch either librarian in their space when these pictures were taken. However, I feel they're out doing their job if they're not sitting at their desk, so that's great. And so that's probably a good thing that they weren't sitting there. But both of these suites, one on the 3rd floor, one on the 4th floor, they're right by the entrance to the suite. So the faculty come in on their way to their office. They can't miss the librarians. The librarians are right there saying good morning, and off they go. So this is where the librarians now live. So what does this kind of mean for us? Bookless means that we spend more money on ILL. Our usage is up 10%, and we've had a lot more book requests because, surprise, not everything is available online. So there are still plenty of books being brought in. The researchers, the biomedical researchers, the ones that work in the lab, especially consider this a strike against us when they recruit faculties and students. Like, because there's nothing to show them, like, look at how much we have. There's just the info desk. And they're probably the group that most dislikes the fact that the library is missing. However, I sat on the admissions committee for OT this year, and I said, as students asked me what I did, I said, well, I run the library. And they said, oh, really? And I said, yeah, we're e-only now. And they're like, that's so cool. So depending on the generation, depending on what they do or how they have interacted with libraries over the years, they may or may not be okay with a bookless library. There are other bookless libraries. As I mentioned before, new medical schools rarely have libraries, physical libraries like you might think of. And the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, they recently remodeled their medical library, and they took all the books out and put it in offsite storage, and they didn't bring them back. So that's another example of a major university that has changed to a bookless library format. However, we have worked really hard over the last couple of years on increasing our services to prove that we are not just books. So we do a lot more lit searches. We help with aspects of publication, curriculum and education work, help with research. We're really now getting into the open education resource assistance. And we are the outreach library for the state of North Dakota because we're one of the few medical libraries left in the state. So we do a lot of outreach activities as well. So we are busy, do not get me wrong. We just don't have a physical library. So I want to talk about it. So we have like 4 minutes. So what do you guys think? Jessica, can we turn the microphones on for everyone or put stuff in chat if you guys wish? But I want to know what have you heard about being a bookless library? Do you know their examples? Do you have thoughts, concerns, fears, cheers? Thanks, Jessica. So from what I understand, they are on. And I saw Mary had posted a message or a question to me about what does it mean to be a resource library? Or is that what you said? What does it mean to be outreach library? So we go to conferences throughout the state, like the North Dakota Nursing Association conference, and we advertise or help people understand that there are free resources from the National Library of Medicine that they can use when they're not associated with a institution that may subscribe to medical resources. And so we do that on behalf of the National Library of Medicine through an agreement that we have with the Regional Medical Library, which is housed at the University of Iowa. Every state in the region should have an outreach library in it, and we are the one here in North Dakota. What does working so close with IT been like? Are people confusing your services? Not really. This is very interesting because in the old building, we had an info desk in the library. IT never has had a tech desk before. So we did exactly, Dawn pointed out, we did a lot of tech before. We do a lot of tech because they're only here 8 to 4:30, and they never had a place for people to go. So they often came to us for help anyway. So now we can get to them a heck of a lot faster because they're in the same space as us. So as soon as somebody comes up and tells us what it is, and we're like, and to the back we go and we get the IT person and say, this is your person to help, not us. So it hasn't been that confusing because everybody already thought of us as being one desk anyway. So it hasn't been as confusing as people may think. We spent more money on ILL. How do you overall resource costs compare to a library with physical items? In this day and age, this library hasn't bought books really in years. All of our money was spent on online electronic resources anyway, so it hasn't really changed. In fact, the fact that I'm spending more on ILL, but I'm still spending the same amount on electronic resources I was 3 years ago means I have to find money to pay ILL. Right now, we've been okay, but as the future progresses, that may change. Let's see. has there been an impact on losing older print articles? Yes, we've been doing a lot more ILL requests of articles that we used to have in print sitting there on the shelves. So that is accurate. Did I get everybody's question? Did I miss anybody? Do you do much with ebooks? Or do you use PDA? Do you buy or do you use PDA? What ebooks we have are in primarily like clinical key or access medicine. They're packages of books that are then accessible to everybody in the school, or actually everybody on UND campus can access those resources. And so those textbooks we have unlimited seats for those. We did purchase a handful of ebooks this year that are, yeah, Marette, why use PDA? Anyway, the ebooks that we bought this year for some of our allied health, it's one person can use it at a time, but once you're done using it, it becomes available to the next person. So one seat in each of those books. And those books were purchased by so another department gave me money that they had extra of, and we bought those books. So that's what we've been doing so far. We haven't had money to buy really a lot of books. And I don't know, going into next year, just like Mary said, it's been a rough year. My budget is 10% less starting on July 1st. So we'll see what happens next year. Right now, I can't imagine buying any ebooks, but we'll see. All right, I think I'm out of time. Okay. So I will say thank you, and I appreciate all your attention and questions. It was awesome.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Yes, we are ready to move on. Our next speaker is Carlene Clark. So Carlene, you can just go ahead and start sharing your slides, and Kelly's will go away. And Kelly, if you could mute your mic, and Carlene, go ahead and unmute. We'll be ready to hear your presentation. Thank you.
All right. Is my mic working?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good. Okay. I didn't put all my information on here. I just recently acquired a new title. So I'm the coordinator of circulation services and student employment. So it's kind of a long one to remember. I'm also one of the lead members of the Student Employment Working Group on the UND campus, which is designed to help prepare student employment for careers beyond college. And I'm also taking classes through San Jose State to finish up my master's degree, which I recently finished up a class this semester on leadership, which talked about the difference between leadership and management, which I didn't realize was kind of a big thing. And as I was going through the course thinking, oh my gosh, I'm already doing so much of this stuff. And what I realized is when I started back right before 9/11 occurred. It was that very summer that it happened. And I was brand new to the whole leading people, taking charge of 29 student employees. And I had not really put a whole lot of thought into how I was going to be a leader to them until they came in and like a bunch of baby ducks, they all curled up right next to me at my computer to watch what was going on. And I had a choice at that moment to decide, am I going to say, sorry, you're at work, get back to work and just do your job? Or was I going to say, okay, we're dealing with a hardship, we're dealing with a change, let's work through it together as a team. I chose at that point to say we're part of a team and we need to do this together. And that has shaped me over the last 17 years that I've been with UND, that I made it a goal to motivate and inspire them as we were going forward, to create a creative team that was very confident in their ability to make decisions, to come up with solutions. Anytime there wasn't a supervisor present, that they could do this and know that they'd be confident enough to do it. But in order to make that a thing, to realize that, we need to know that the leader's most important role is to instill that confidence in their people. They need to be able to dare to take the risks and the responsibility, and you must back them up if they make mistakes. I can't stress that enough. You have to back up your employees. It's not just the student employees. This crosses all boundaries. All of the research that I've covered this semester has talked about effective executives, managers, leaders. How do you get this happening in there? You have to back them up. That they have to feel like they can trust you to come and talk to you about these different things. For me, this can be something as important as saying that yes, this wasn't done correct. Not that they did it wrong or they did it badly. This wasn't done correctly. Why don't we try it this way next time? Or how would you change it next time? The other half of this, though, is to realize they need to see you fail as well. That even if it's something as small as not having your name tag on, or if they see a mistake on the schedule that you create, any of those small things, weaknesses establish trust and authenticity in the people that are working under you. So it's really important for them to be able to see that even if it's just a small thing, for them to know that you're capable of making those mistakes as well. One of the things that one of our things we had research talked about, that these are letting them know that they can do things better. And to get to that, the difference between leadership and management then, when we look at this, the two distinctive systems, we have to find a way to balance them. Management is going to be the kind of source that copes with the complexity. They're think of a basketball team. This is the team manager, is the one that says, this is our goal. We're going to win so many games this semester, as opposed to the coach who's on the sideline, that's your leader, saying, okay, they gave me these 14 people and I have to figure out how they're all going to work to get the basketball to the same end. That's the difference between management and leadership. One copes with all of the small issues that happen. They bring order, they bring consistency, they set the goals. Leaders deal with the change that has to happen. They set the direction, they develop the vision and say, how can we work together? They adjust the values and change those perspectives so that people are able to say as a team, okay, we're all moving in the same direction. Maybe we're not all on board with the exact same thing, but we can see where we're going and we can do it together, as opposed to one person saying, just do it. People tend to not like having somebody just come at them and say, just do it. They want somebody that's going to motivate them, inspire them, and get that change to happen together so they can say that we did this. And managers, on the other hand, are assumed to be good leaders, but that's a really popular myth that's out there. They're the ones that produce the results. They create the plan of action. They create the attack that's going to happen. They're your great generals. So it's important for them to be in the mix of things as much as it is for a good, strong leader. You can have a manager that's a strong leader, but generally they're two different people. So when we look at that, management, again, is controlling the problem solving. They monitor the results, as opposed to the leadership. They achieve the vision by motivating, inspiring. If you look at the bottom line there, it says that they appeal to the basic but often untapped human needs, values, and emotions. For me, I think of Abilene in The Help, where she says, use kind, use smart, use important. It's an important part of a leader to inspire their team and to say, yes, you did a great job. Even if it's something tiny, I make sure that with all of my student employees, they think I may not be watching until out of the blue, I'll just say, I really like the way you handled that interaction. I really like the way you handled showing your coworker how to do that. That was really great respect in the way you talked to the dean of the library. It's those small things that they realize that we are watching them and that we do see it. And it's important right now, too, because the NACE standards, the National Association of College Educators, for 2017 has set the top thing that employers are looking for as leadership. They've dropped communication to the third most important thing that was important last year. This year now, the most important thing is leadership. So it's important to give them those skills so that they start to realize that this is how it's working for them and this is how it's going to do that. So how do we encourage this? Leaders almost always have that opportunity during their 20s and 30s to try to lead, take that risk, and to learn from both the triumphs and the failures. It's important for them to have those opportunities. They need to know that people are often geared for the management part. They forget the human element, which leads us into this particular example. It says executives who are overeducated in management and undereducated in leadership. The idea of getting those people moving in the same direction appears to be organizational, but what they need to realize is that they need to align them. And it goes back to that, how can we all work towards that exact same vision that we're trying to get to? So how do we get there? We need both of them. We need the managers that are going to say that we're going to organize this. Here's our plan. This is the staff that we need. Here's the structure. Here's our framework that we're going to use. Here's all of our budgets. Here's what our plan is. This is our space. This is our resources. And the leaders that say, all right, people, let's go do this. And you look at the picture that I have on the bottom, again, shows that. The manager says, here it is. We're going to do this. And they roll it out. They push it. Where the leader is both pulling and is in the middle of the charge with the people, saying, we can do this. It's one of the most important things to say, we can do it, not I can do it, I did it, or you go do it. We can do it is the most important thing that you can teach them. Which takes us again to that aligning and organizing. It's a communication challenge. Aligning involves talking to more of the individuals than the organizing does. But the empowerment that comes, most people, they find that they deal with the vulnerability in hearing that that's against policy, we can't afford it, or just shut up and do as you're told. I'm sure everybody's had at least one experience with that, with the boss somewhere along the way that just says, shut up and do as you're told. And that's an actual quote from Kotner that said, yes, this is something we have to watch for when we're dealing with people. We don't want them to feel so vulnerable that they don't trust their employers, that they can't go into that office and say, you know, I'm on the front line and I see that this is something that could be done better. We're all leaders if we all work within the same team. And again, I've repeated, mistakes are stepping stones to greatness. Rather than failure, they need to know that there's no punishment for addressing those areas. I've seen that time and time again over my almost 30 years of working in the workforce now, that people are afraid to go and say, I'm noticing there's a problem, because they're afraid they're going to get blamed for it. So it goes back to that same issue of saying, I failed, I made a mistake, I'm going to make sure that this is corrected. Oh, you saw something? Let's work together to figure that out. So that comes down to the aligning versus organizing. Give the work back to the people. One of the best quotes that I came across for that said that many managers are accustomed to treating subordinates like machinery, requiring control. Letting the people take the initiative in defining and solving problems means that management needs to learn to support rather than control. That's a really hard thing for people to embrace, because they're so used to management saying, this is how it has to be, this is our box, this is our framework. To let it go is not an easy thing for people. The other half of this is that all strong, true leaders have integrity. That means that leaders are people who are able to express themselves fully. They know who they are, they know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and they know how to fully deploy those strengths and compensate for their weaknesses. If that means relying on another person, they don't have to know everything. They shouldn't know everything. They have to know that it's okay to say, this is something that's not going to be my strong point, but I know Tom can do it or Jane can do it. And what it comes down to is Peter Drucker's comment that management is doing the right thing. That's creating your framework, getting your budget. Leadership is doing the right things. To make this all happen, though, we have 8 practices. I only got 6 of them on this slide. I'm sorry for that. I'll tell you the last 2. The first 2, what needs to be done, what's right for the enterprise. They give you the knowledge to make things happen. They develop an action plan, take responsibility for the decision. That includes if a new employee or somebody who's recently been elevated to a new position fails in their position, it is not that person. It's the employer or the supervisor that has to take responsibility and say, I failed in my training. What can I do to make it better the next time? What can I do to fix this now? They take responsibility for communicating. and they focus on opportunities rather than problems. That say, yes, there's a problem here. What are our options? What can we do to fix this? Then the last two things that ensure that the whole organization feels responsible and accountable, they run productive meetings, and they thought and they said we rather than I, which I've said repeatedly, say we rather than I. It seems like a really easy thing to do, but people forget that it is a team, and you need to make sure everybody feels included in that and to acknowledge them when they do those things. So the last thing that I would leave you with is that great managers come with training. Anybody can take classes on management, and they can learn how to do that. But leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that that impact lasts in your absence. Great example I can give to leave you is that when I was out several years ago with a terminal illness, luckily I've recovered. When I was going through that, my students did such a bang-up job. They created spreadsheets and lists and forms and charts, and by the time I came back, they made the place run smoother than I ever had because I had given them that power. So it's something to keep in mind as you move forward, that leaders who are clearly only interested in their own agendas, their own advancement, and their own well-being will never be followed willingly. People want to follow leaders who place the interests of others above their own. If you'd like further reading on this, I've included a few references, especially Drucker. He's only a 7-page article. It's a really great one on effective executives. And the last book on credibility. I'd really recommend those. So if there's any, I know I ran a little long on time, but if anybody has any questions, I'll take those now.
Carlene, this is Mary, and I just want to say, I had said earlier, I think this would be a great presentation for NDLA's Hot Topics.
Thank you. I'll give a shout out to Dr. Carol Sawyer from SJSU. She was one of the great inspirers for this.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem like we have too many questions, but thank you so much, Carlene. This was great. And my apologies. I swear every time I unmute the mic, they start hammering right outside my door. Sorry. But we are going to go ahead and move on to our last speakers. So Holly, Megan, and Zainab, you could go ahead and pull up your slides, unmute your mics. Thanks again, Carlene. And you can please mute your mic, and we'll get to our last presentation.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Today we have 3 perspectives on promoting OERs at UND from Megan, myself, and Zainab. So our presentation today includes that for the past 2 years we've been working on a working group here at UND to promote the use of open educational resources, which are also known as OERs. OERs are free or low-cost, openly licensed textbooks or other teaching resources. Today we will be talking about 3 aspects of our work, including the partnerships that we engaged in, the promotional efforts that we used on our campus, and how we produced our own OER text in the library. So this slide lists our external partners, and many of these partners were involved in funding the OER initiative across the state. In 2005, the North Dakota State Legislature provided roughly $100,000 in funding for OERs across the whole state. And this initial funding really helped UND gain traction in promoting and adopting OERs here at UND. This slide shows the partners that are all represented represented in our OER working group here on our campus. The focus of our working group was to promote OERs on campus, as well as help instructors to adopt and implement OERs in their courses.
So next we're going to talk about promotions. Promotions are a key element to our success thus far with OERs. The first method of promotion was holding different live events. Since the OER movement began in late 2015, there have been 4 different seminars or symposiums in North Dakota. The first took place at Valley City State University, and the remaining 3 were held by the UND OER working group at UND. A variety of speakers have all worked to inform audience members of the benefits of OERs, specifically how OERs help address the financial challenges of students and increase academic success and retention. Speakers have included Dave Ernst, Director of the Center for Open Education and Executive Director of the Open Textbook Network, Nicole Allen, Director of the Open Education for Spark, UND faculty who have successfully adopted OERs, UND faculty currently doing OER research, UND librarians, and SILT instructional designers. These events have hugely helped promote OERs and allowed us to successfully reach faculty and gain their buy-in. In addition, we made sure to align these events with national movements like Open Access Week and Open Education Week in order to further promote both events on campus. We've also found that hosting OER events frequently has kept the enthusiasm and interest in OERs alive and allowed us to reach new faculty. Now moving on to workshops. So in OER workshops, CFL, or Chesterford's Library, librarians, and SILT instructional designers were able to work in small groups to assist the awarded faculty in adopting and implementing OERs. Workshops consisted of 5 half-day sessions where we covered topics like course design, active learning, Creative Commons and copyright, where to find available OER resources, universal design issues, and accessibility issues. So the second method of promotion we used was our OER research guide, or LibGuide. Holly Gabriel and I created this as a tool to educate and promote open access and OERs, which can be used during events or at faculty's point of need. With so much information available online regarding open access and OERs, this tool really allows faculty to have a single place to go to get their basic questions answered, find out where they can start to look for OERs to adopt or use in their classes, and lets them know about other upcoming OER events and who they can contact for additional guidance. Finally, we also utilized more active promotion with some of the below communication tools. So UND working group members spoke with faculty one-on-one, shared events, grant funding opportunities, and awards via social media accounts, the Chesterford's Library blog, and digital posters across campus. And bibliographers also reached out to faculty with emails and included information in new faculty welcome packets.
Okay, and that takes us to our third perspective on OER, which is production. So Megan and Holly talked to you about how they promoted the use of OER among faculty through education and funding. Faculty generally use their funding to adapt courses and modify existing OER texts to better suit their needs. The library got to gain some experience in doing this kind of adaptation through our own purchase of Elwin B. Robinson's History of North Dakota. So in July 2016, we purchased a license to this book from NDSU Press. History of North Dakota has never actually had a digital edition. So what I received was a PDF file of scanned pages from the print book. So in order to make an open access edition of this, I had to run OCR to pick up the text there, do some substantial editing to get rid of errors, and then convert the book into accessible versions of different digital formats like a PDF, an EPUB, MOBI files. You can see on the slide that there's something called a preview site, and that's got the first 6 chapters of the text. So if you're kind of curious, like, what does this digital text look like and why does she keep talking about web accessibility, you can look at it there. The next point I want to hit. So all that work that I just discussed was really just about getting the History of North Dakota to function as digital text. And that's what pretty much all OER texts already are. So one of the really great things about OER textbooks is you've got the ability to modify them. If the license allows for it, and most of them do, a professor can download an OER text, edit it to better suit their classroom's needs, and then release the new edition online under the same kind of open license. I decided then that I wanted to modify our text in 2 ways. So the first really new feature was I went through the citations we had in History of North Dakota to see if any of the reference material that Ellen B. Robinson drew on was available online. And where it was, I went and added a link to the material in the footnotes. If I couldn't find a free digital edition, I put in a link to the WorldCat entry for the text instead. And that way people would be able to follow those citations more easily and just sort of immediately jump if they were kind of curious about a point that he was drawing on another work for. And this worked out really well because Robinson used a lot of government materials in his research, so a lot of what he was citing had already been digitized. The second feature that I implemented was with the help of Aaron Barth from the Northern Plains Heritage Foundation. One of the conditions that Northern Plain Heritage made with us when they partnered to digitize History of North Dakota was to ask that the library find some way to link the text to Northern Plain Heritage's current heritage sites. So Aaron gave me a list of their heritage locations and information he had on their historical significance. So I went through the text and I will hit that question in a second. I went through the text and tried to find any points where those heritage sites were mentioned, even if it wasn't by name, but he was obviously talking about a location that would eventually become it, and added a logo from Northern Plain Heritage beside it. So if a reader is going through the text and they see the little Northern Plain Heritage logo, if they click it, it will take them to a new index at the end of the book that has the site, has a little bit of an explanation about the significance of it, its website, if it has one, and then a list of all other mentions of the text of that same location. So they can jump back to their initial reference point pretty easily, or if they're sort of like, Cross Ranch Preserve is super interesting. I wonder what else happened to it in our history. They can kind of just click through and see other points where it happened. And the idea there is it highlights to the readers how Robinson's work informed the importance of those current locations. And that's just like one example of how an OER can give an educator the ability to really make sure that the text that they're using is aligned with their educational goals. So instead of having to assign supplemental materials or modifying their syllabus to match the textbook that they've already got to work with, they can build in features that make it match better what it is they want to do.
And the links, keeping the links current?
Yes, and you asked about maintaining the links current. So that's actually something I have been looking at right now. The major thing that I'm planning to do is, in cases where the sites I'm sort of concerned about it going down at some point, is linking to an archived version instead.
Okay.
And I'm going to let Holly take that next slide that we're moving on to.
All right. So here is a slide with some of the lessons that we learned throughout this project. The fact that we reached out one-to-one faculty helped move the initiative forward, especially in the beginning when we were targeting high enrollment classes. Also, using multiple promotion outlets such as events and social media kept OERs on the campus's mind and helped us to reach new faculty who are just starting to teach here. Also emphasizing the benefits to stakeholders, raised the commitment from all our partners because we all wanted to save students money as well as increase retention rates. And so student government got involved because they saw that this project was helping save students money. And so they offered money as well from the Office of Student Government. And then last but not least, addressing faculty concerns is also critical to buy-in. Faculty have concerns about the quality of open textbooks, and so we made sure to highlight on our research guide the collections of open textbooks and resources that are peer-reviewed. Also recognizing to faculty that it does take a lot of time and energy to implement and adopt OERs was helpful so that we communicated that we understood and that faculty got stipends to work during the summer on adopting their open textbooks.
And with that, we will take questions. All right.
Hi, I was wondering if the library kind of started this overall discussion about the open education resources, or where that started, and then at what point the library jumped in on that.
The initial conversation started at ND US, so at the state level, and then pretty much from the beginning, Stephanie Walker, our dean, kind of was able to jump on board and create that UND OER working group to really get us involved and get the, like we said, get faculty buy-in and kind of bring OERs to our students and campus.
Oh, sorry. When I initially saw that question about monitoring links, I kind of saw it as a side thing, and I feel like I didn't answer it. So monitoring links for things that are broken or changed, I didn't quite list that in the formats, but I'm also doing what is pretty much a website version, so just HTML, and we can just run our link checker off that to check for broken links, and at that point it's pretty easy to just go in and change them. So sorry, I saw that and I was thinking, oh, how do I do preservation links? But that is not quite what you were asking.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank all of our presenters for these awesome presentations.